Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Yasodanandana Raja Jana Jaya Raja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana Jaya Raja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana Jaya Raja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Dhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Dhiravarachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopijana Ballabha Grivardhari Jaya Grivardhari. Gopijana Ballabha Grivardhari Jaya Grivardhari. Yasodanandana Raja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Raja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatiravarachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Yamunatiravarachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prabhadakasharya Asadhara Satushi Shriman. His Divine Grace Lacy Bhaktivedanta Swami Raj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Haribol Slava Zabrani Bhaktam Slava Shri Guru Shri Gaurangi. Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tenamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Siddharane. Om Agana Timirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Tadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shiguro Shiyuta Parakamalam Shiguro Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvaitam Savadutam Vrijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Svitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishubhanu Sudadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyevacha Patidanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 24, Matsya, the Lord's Fish Incarnation, text number 39. After thus instructing the king, the Supreme Personality of Godhead immediately disappeared. Then King Satyavrata began to wait for the time of which the Lord had instructed. After spreading kusha grass with its tips pointing east, the saintly king himself, facing the northeast, sat down on the grass and began to meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, who assumed the form of a fish. Thereafter, the gigantic clouds pouring incessant water swelled the ocean more and more. Thus the ocean began to overflow onto the land and inundate the entire world. As Satyavrata remembered the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he saw a boat coming near him. Thus he collected herbs and creepers, and accompanied by saintly brahmanas, he got aboard the boat. The saintly brahmanas, being pleased with the king, said to him, "O king, please meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Keshava. He will save us from the impending danger and arrange for our well-being." Then, while the king constantly meditated upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a large golden fish appeared in the ocean of inundation. The fish had one horn and was 8 million miles long. Pretty long. I don't know what we can compare it to. I think the Earth is something like 40,000 miles around. So you divide 40 into 8, you get around 200 times. 240, 400,000, yeah. No, it's around, what's that? No, it's more than that. If you divide 40 into 8 million, then you get, it'll go twice into 8. It's around, if it was, half a million. 500,000 times, no, not quite. Anyhow, it's a lot more than around the Earth. So million has six zeros, and 40 has 1. So that's 5 zeros, and then there's 2 in front of the 5 zeros. So that's 200,000 times around the Earth is 8 million. So how long would it take you to go 200,000 times around the Earth? Even if you took an airplane. 200,000 times. So an airplane spaceship could go around 3 times the Earth in a day. So you divide that into 200,000, you get around 700 times, 700 days. So it would take 2 years for a spacecraft going around the Earth 3 times a day. It would take around 2 years of traveling like that to finally go from one end of the fish to the next, Matsya. Now that's pretty big, anyhow, just to give an idea. Following the instructions formally given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the king anchored the boat to the fish's horn using the serpent Vasuki as a rope. So just imagine how big the king was. He couldn't have been too small. I mean, who can pick up Vasuki? Vasuki was used in the churning of the Mount Meru. The demigods and the demons grabbed hold of Vasuki and used him to churn. So Vasuki is huge also. So the king, in order to take, even to imagine the size of the horn on a 2 million mile fish, 8 million mile fish. And now we have some idea, it's a little tiny king and there's a big flood and he got on a boat, but the dimensions are quite different from what we usually think about. If we actually believe this, that these things actually happen. How is it possible? We're so tiny, it makes me feel tiny. Usually I feel really big and strong and powerful. And now I feel real tiny. I think I'll close the book and go home. That's what we are, we're quite tiny. Following the instructions formally given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the king anchored the boat to the fish's horn, using the serpent Vasuki as a rope. Thus being satisfied, began to offering prayers to the Lord. Shri Raju Vacha Anadya Vidyo Pahatma Samvidas Tanmula Samsara Parishrama Tura Yadrichaya Pashrita Yam Apanuyor Vimuktido Na Paramo Gurur Bhavan Shri Raju Vacha Anadya Vidyo Pahatma Samvidas Tanmula Samsara Parishrama Tura Yadrichayo Pashrita Yam Apanuyor Vimuktido Na Paramo Gurur Bhavan Aruvacha Not Samvidas Tanmula Samsara Parishramatura Yadrichayo Pashrita Yam Apanuyor Vimuktido Na Paramo Gurur Bhavan Anadya Vidyo Pahatma Samvidas Tanmula Samsara Parishramatura Richayo Pashrita Yam Apnuyor Vimuktido Na Paramo Gurur Bhavan. Ladies, Shri Raju Vacha Anadya Vidya Upasaratma Samvidas Tanmula Samsara Parishramatura Yadrichayo Pashida Yamapa Nuyor Vimuktido na Paramo Gurur Bhavan Shri Rajavacha. The king offered prayers as follows. Anadi, from time immemorial. Avidya, by ignorance. Apahata, has been lost. Atma samvida, knowledge about the self. Tat, that is. Mula, the root. Samsara, material bondage. Parishrama, full of miserable conditions and hard work. Atura, suffering. Yadrichaya, by the supreme will. Apashvita, being favored by the acharyas. Yam, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Apnuyu, can achieve. Vimuktada, the process of liberation. Na, are, Parama, the Supreme. Guru, spiritual master. Bhavan, your lordship. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The king said, by the grace of the Lord, those who have lost their self-knowledge since time immemorial and who become this ignorant, and who because of this ignorance are involved in a material conditioned life full of miseries, attain the chance to meet the Lord's devotee. I accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the Supreme Spiritual Master. Purport, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually the Supreme Spiritual Master. The Supreme Lord knows everything about the suffering of the conditioned soul, and therefore He appears in this material world, sometimes personally, sometimes by incarnation, and sometimes by authorizing a living being to act on His behalf. In all cases, however, He is the original spiritual master who enlightens the conditioned souls who are suffering in the material world. The Lord is always busy helping the conditioned souls in many ways. Therefore, He is addressed here as Paramo Gurur Bhavan, the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who acts to spread Krishna consciousness, is also guided by the Supreme Lord to act properly in executing the Lord's order. Such a person may appear to be an ordinary human being because he acts on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Spiritual Master. He is not to be neglected as ordinary. It is therefore said, Acharya mam vijanayat. As an acharya who acts on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead should be understood to be as good as the Supreme Lord Himself. Sakshadari twen samasta shastrira uktastita bhyata eva sadbi kintu prabhur yak priya eva tasya vande guru shri charnaravindo. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is advised that the spiritual master acting on the Supreme Lord's behalf must be worshipped as good as the Supreme Lord, for he is the Lord's most confidential servant in broadcasting the Lord's message for the benefit of the conditioned souls involved in the material world. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Vacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Satarana. The Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarva Dharma Prityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Ahang Twang Sara Papebhyo Mokshisyami Masuchaha. basically, this is following the verse, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto. Krishna has a plan for us to come to the spiritual energy. Because Krishna knows that as long as we're in the material energy, to one degree or another, we suffer. That the material nature is nothing but suffering. So if you feel like you're suffering, then you're at least partially aware. Therefore, atarta brahma jignasya, when one has the human form of life, it's the time to inquire, why am I suffering? Well, besides, who I am. This is the first thing that Sanatana Goswami inquired about when he met Lord Chaitanya. Who am I? And then tapatraya, why am I suffering? The threefold miseries. Now, of course, in our particular situation, when we get a little happiness, we think we're happy. We think that is happiness. A little relief from the suffering that we ourselves are causing ourselves. Well, let's say, when we get a little relief from our hankering or lamentation, we call that ecstasy. But if we gave up hankering lamentation, we'd always be in ecstasy. So our little attempts to get free from temporary hankering lamentation, to get a little peace for a few moments, which we call happiness, can be had all the time if we just give up the cause of our unhappiness, which is our hankering and lamentation. Therefore, Krishna says, "The prarishat priyam prapya na dvija prapichapiram stira buddhira samudo brahmavid brahmani sitaha." A person who doesn't rejoice when he attains something pleasant, looking forward to our next birthday, and maybe they'll have a cake, and it'll be a nice cake, and I'll be happy. And I'll blow out the candles, and hopefully there won't be too many of them, and that will be happiness. So that is the standard of happiness. If there was no cake, and there were no candles, then we'd be even more unhappy. So it's a little relief from our anxiety. Does someone love me out there enough to bake a cake for me? So it all comes down to that. They showed me a little bit of love and I'm happy. And I hope the cake is good. But real happiness is, there's no more hankering for love, there's no more hankering for pleasure, there's no lamentation over the loss of it, because one is always happy. And Krishna is a reservoir of happiness. And his devotees, especially Srimati Radharani, are an ocean of happiness. And in their association, there's too much happiness for us. There's more than we can even begin to even imagine. And therefore, there's no question of hankering for anything, lamenting, because there's nothing to hanker for or lament for, because we have exactly what we're looking for. Affection, love, pleasure, purpose of life, to increase that happiness, love, and pleasure. And we play a part in it. And everyone plays a part of it. The whole spiritual world is one happy community where everyone is involved in increasing happiness, love, and pleasure, and for everyone. And here everyone is thinking, my tongue wants something, the hell with everyone else. As long as my tongue is satisfied, then I'm satisfied. Even if it causes displeasure and suffering to others, well, then my brain tells me that they're not actually living. They're actually just, they appear to be alive, they appear to be sentient beings, but I don't really believe it because they're just chemical reactions. So then our intelligence is lost, and we actually believe we're good people, although Yamadutas are waiting for us to show us how good we really are. So one who doesn't rejoice when he attains something pleasant, nor lament when he attains something unpleasant, who's self-intelligent. Naprarishat priyam prapya, nodvijet prapicha priya, stira buddhir asambudo, who's not bewildered. Brahmavid, who's situated in Brahman, stitaha. So this is preliminary for just thinking about Krishna. In other words, if we want to experience a little tiny bit of happiness by thinking about Krishna a little bit, then we can't do it when we're hankering and lamenting. When we get something, we think, oh, I got what I wanted. And for 3 seconds, we feel some rush that I got it. Finally, I got it. And then, just like you see, you go to nowadays, when I grew up, I didn't have practically any toys. That's why I'm so deprived. I didn't even think all I had is a bunch of toy soldiers, plastic toy soldiers. I didn't even have a toy tank, little tiny toy soldiers. And nowadays you go to people's houses and their children, there's a separate room. Isn't that right? The children have a separate room for toys. And it's not big enough. They got toy tanks, toy cars, airplanes that practically fly around the house. Train sets, video games, everything. And part of it is broken because they get, after playing with it for a couple of days, they get frustrated and they break it. That's their happiness. I broke it. Oh, I broke it. Buy me another one. I need more. Another toy. I'm deprived. You're depriving. I'm calling up the welfare organization. You didn't buy me a toy in 2 days. I feel deprived. You don't love me. There's no love in this house. I'm leaving. But you're only 2 years old. That's all right. I'll find someone who loves me. So we've been brought up in such a culture, and therefore, we're always, what's the next rush? What's the next thing I'm going to get that's going to cause me a 5-second rush that I got it? And then 3 days of lamenting when I lose it. Self-intelligent. Who's self-intelligent? Who actually knows that they're a spiritual soul? How much during the day do we remember we're a spiritual soul? And how much do we enter into the classroom, we discover I'm a spiritual soul again for the 5,000th time. And then I walk out and I become a body again, or a mind. Self-intelligent, unbewildered. Most of the time we will be bewildered, we just justify it. Yes, I'm bewildered, I don't know what's going on, but I'm a nice person anyhow. At least I'm humble enough to admit that I'm bewildered. I'm not going to do anything to get out of my bewilderment, but I'm just going to complain I'm bewildered. And you're the one who caused it. I'm a victim. Look at me, I'm a victim. Feel sorry, lament. Brahmavid Brahmanistita, who's actually fixed in Brahman, in the Brahman conception, and works according to that. Then naprarishat priyam prapya nadvijat prapicha priyam stira buddhi vayas parshe vasaktatma vindatminiyat sukham sabrahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashnute. So such a person is actually situated in transcendence. And he looks Vayas parshe vasaktatma. He's not interested in external objects of sense gratification, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure from within. In this way, the self-realized soul enjoys unlimited happiness because he concentrates on the Supreme. So when we go through the preliminary process, stopping, hankering, lamenting, we sit down and chant our rounds, and we think, I'm going to chant my rounds, I'm going to try to pay attention. And as soon as I pay a little attention, I hear the holy name, I think, wow, I'm a pure devotee. Yeah. They should make an announcement about it tomorrow. I actually heard the holy name for 5 minutes. How come the demigods haven't showered flowers on me yet? What's wrong with them? Maybe it's on the roof they showered it. Couldn't get into the building. No, we should sit there. Today I'm going to actually hear the holy name, and I'm going to actually chant the holy name. Try and chant it, so there's something to hear. And if there's hanker lamentation, I'm going to try not to pay attention to that. I'm going to try to pay attention to the holy name, the holy names. And I'm going to identify myself as Brahman. So if my mind gets attracted to some thought and it deviates, I'm not going to spend the rest of the japa period lamenting. Oh, I was chanting so perfectly, and then somehow or another Maya captured me. I was a victim again by Maya, and 2 hours go by, I'm a victim. I can't help it. No one should think I'm a spirit. Yes, I'm an illusion, asamudo. This is my situation. But I should try to pay attention. I should try to chant lovingly, feelingly to Krishna, that He's there to help me if I want to be helped. And the only way He can help me is if I actually try to chant lovingly, because the spiritual world is situated in love. Everything where we used to, the three modes of material nature, is situated in different degrees of lust, anger, and greed. Some of the lust, anger, and greed actually has some elements of love in it. When the sky clears a little bit, when the clouds clear, there's some rays that come through in the mode of goodness. But even I come to the mode of goodness, I'm listening, it's not the perfection. It's ultimately when I actually become so worthy that Krishna gives me so much mercy that within my heart, the actual spark of spontaneous love is arisen, and then I feel love all the time, in any circumstance. But that has to come through practice. And therefore Krishna advises, yehi samsparshya-boga, dukkha yone evate adyantavanta kuntiya nate shuramate buddha. An intelligent person, yehi sparsha, he doesn't take pleasure in this temporary happiness, which is due to contact with the senses, with their objects, that such pleasures have a beginning and an end, O son of Kunti, and therefore the wise does not delight in them. He doesn't reject them. Oh, I'm not going to eat anything. It's sense pleasure. He doesn't reject sense pleasure, but he doesn't delight in it. That now I've reached the goal of life, I've gratified my senses, my day is finished, it's not a fast day today, I can take prasadam, and my life is complete until noon or 1:30 when there's another prasadam. Whereas I keep on saying, they say in Spanish, barriga llena, corazón contento. When the stomach is full, the heart is pleased. It's not the ultimate goal of life. It's there will be happiness, and there'll be even more happiness if we take prasadam with devotion and chew the food, pay attention to what we're doing. There'll be even more happiness, but the ultimate goal is to think about Krishna. So if we're thinking about Krishna when we're eating prasadam, then that's perfection of eating prasadam. And then Krishna says, yes, there is a problem. We're attached. Therefore Krishna says, Shaknoti haiva yakshodum praksharira vimokshana kama kroda bhavan vegans siktasa sukhinara. One who is able to tolerate the urges of the senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is a yogi and he's happy in this world. So we're not going to get rid of the force of desire and anger so quickly. That today I'm going to wake up and we'll say, no more anger today, no more frustration, no more hankering, no more trying to, it doesn't work that way. We have to learn tolerance. So therefore regulation of our senses, not stopping them, but regulating them. And while we're regulating them, that makes it easier to think about Krishna. And the more we can concentrate our minds upon Krishna, then gradually our heart will become purified. When Krishna says we're trying to be regulated, and at the same time we're trying to remember Him, then He helps us by entering into our remembrance. Because it's not our remembrance. We don't manufacture Krishna in our minds. We have no such power to manufacture God. No, when Krishna sees we're making an effort and he's pleased by the effort, then he enters into our remembrance along with his devotees when they're pleased with our efforts to remember him, when we go through the process of remembering him. But we have to check the force of desire and anger. That is, we have to not take refuge in them when they're presented to us, but try to take refuge in Krishna consciousness and the ninefold process of devotional service, so that Krishna will be pleased and enter into our mind. So this disturbance caused by hankering, lamentation, kama, krodha, kam and krodha, lust and anger and greed, that this will be, when Krishna sees we're trying to get free from it, we're trying to take shelter of him, then he gives us shelter, and gradually these desires will dissipate. They won't stop immediately. The problem is we were in ecstasy, Krishna gives us a little mercy, and we think we're a great devotee. Now I need a vacation. That was really hard being Krishna conscious. Give me a break. Okay, Maya says, I'll give you a break until I break you in half. Therefore, Krishna says, Sarva Dharma Parityajya Mame Kam Sharanam Vraja. Krishna wants us to be happy, and he knows that the spiritual realm of experience is the happiness that everyone's looking for, and therefore he wants us to get rid of everything that's causing our misery. He's not saying, give up everything, surrender to me, because he said, bow down, little soul, bow down, I'm God. Bow down or I'll crush you. That's not Krishna's mood at all. He wants the soul to become unlimitedly happy, and he knows when the soul is put into the material energy, even briefly, when he forgets Krishna and he's back in the illusory energy, then the soul suffers, and Krishna doesn't want the soul to suffer. He wants it to be happy. His only desire is that the whole soul becomes happy. Then he says, give up all your nonsense, all these things that are going to cause you to one degree or another unhappiness, and take shelter of me and my Braja, my spiritual kingdom called Braj, Sharanam Braja, and go to Braj, go to the spiritual energy, go to the spiritual world ultimately. So that's what Krishna wants. And then he gives further instructions. Don't associate with, even you take to the process of devotional service, even you start remembering me, and you start thinking about me, you try to become my devotee, you worship me, you surrender to me, you offer your homage unto me, you become humble and offer your homage. And even you come to the platform of actually trying to surrender to me, avoid bad association. Because the conditioned soul is full of affection for different kinds of association, sometimes for good association, and sometimes for very bad association. Even Bhagavan Das, Bhagavan Acharya, he was a cowherd boy in Krishna Lila, associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very advanced devotee, obviously, he knew his identity as a cowherd boy. But he had one brother who was a Mayavadi, learned scholar, and he came home one day and wanted to Jagannath Puri and wanted to read his commentary on Sharirak Bhasya. So Bhagavan Acharya, being a liberal cowherd boy, he wasn't a cowherd boy, he was an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but being absorbed in his spiritual identity, was very liberal. And he didn't object to his brother transmitting this Mayavadi philosophy to others. He didn't even object to hearing it himself. But Swarup Damodar chastised him and said, yes, you may not be affected by hearing this Mayavadi philosophy, but what value is it? It's useless. And anyone who hears that Brahman and God are the same, the infinitesimal soul and the Supreme Lord are exactly the same, then he'll at least become sorrowful within his heart. It's a useless endeavor to hear it. And even if you don't fall down, although it says that even a Mahabhagavat will fall down hearing this philosophy, that even if you don't fall down, still you'll feel sorrowful to hear it. It'll take, your beloved Krishna is being minimized. It's very sorrowful for one who's in love with Krishna. If you're in love with someone, to hear them being criticized and minimized is very unpleasant. So after hearing that, Bhagavan Acharya sent his brother away from Jagannath Puri. So we also have to avoid bad association. Then we'll get empowered to actually go and preach. We can actually go into the society and meet all different types of people and be able to give them the holy name, give them something about Krishna consciousness without ourselves being affected by false prestige or by bad association, etc., etc. So there's a process. If we don't take to the beginning process, then it's very hard to go on with the different stages. If we start with a solid foundation of Krishna consciousness, then we can go on and eventually give up some of our bad habits, give up some of our bad association, and actually take seriously Krishna consciousness. And therefore, just like the more we absorb our minds in the process of devotional service, and the more Krishna appears within our remembrance, then it's like an iron being put into the fire. It gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and then it becomes just like the fire. It becomes non-different from the fire. And then we're actually situated in the spiritual world, in our spiritual identity again. So there's a very clear, simple process to do that. Not so easy to follow it. But if we understand it, then in spite of the fact that we look around, we say, well, no one else is doing it, why should I do it? That when we see the clear path, then we'll do it. If everyone else is entering into the fire, are we going to enter the fire with them? Well, everyone else is doing it. I want to be normal like everyone else. When you see all the lemmings are the little animals that jump over the cliff supposedly and commit suicide, we see, well, they're doing it. We've got to be, together. I don't want to be too against the flow. I'll go with the flow. Yeah. So we have to be somewhat aware of where everything's going and where we should be going and how to get there. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? It wasn't that bad a class, was it?
Hare Krishna. So there is 2 questions on the internet from Avaduta Rai Dasa. So it seems that Bhaktivinoda Thakur equalizes happiness experienced in Vaidhi Bhakti with Brahmananda and Premananda with happiness on the level of Prema. What do you think?
Bhaktivinoda Thakur says Premananda is on the same level as Prema.
That happiness experience...
Brahmananda is the same thing as Premananda? Could you read it again?
Yes, again. Okay. That happiness experienced in Vaidhi Bhakti with Brahmananda and Premananda with happiness on the level of Prema.
Oh, I don't know what you're referring to, but a speck of gold is gold. It may not be the gold mine, but it's something. Qualitatively, it may be similar, but quantitatively, it's very small. So a little bit of happiness in Krishna consciousness, even in Vaidhi Bhakti, is some experience of a higher taste. Therefore, it says that in sadhana, there are 3 stages of devotional service. There's sadhana bhakti, that Rupa Goswami gives characteristics for, sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti. So in sadhana bhakti, one can experience, even in sadhana bhakti, if one follows especially the powerful processes of chanting the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, serving the deities, serving the devotees, and living in a holy place, then one who concentrates his mind on these potent processes can experience a little bit of bhava, a little bit of ecstasy. Doesn't mean that one is completely in ecstasy, but one can get a little taste of what ecstasy is like, even in Vaidhi Bhakti. But there's a difference between putting the iron in the fire and getting a little warm and leaving it there so it becomes just like the fire. Anything else?
Yes, one more question. Somebody asked me, from Avadhuta Rai also, so somebody asked me if there is a difference between doing devotional service only with the mind and second, also with the heart. What you would say about this?
Well, where do you think the mind is? How can you? Well, if you're comparing the mind to just thinking about Krishna, the mind has three phases: thinking, feeling, and willing. So if you can equate the heart with feeling, it's also contained within the mind. You don't feel outside the mind. It's just another further stage of the mind's activity: thinking, feeling, willing. So the mind doesn't only have one aspect of thinking, it also has feeling and willing. So we can't really differentiate the heart from the mind. But all you can say is that if you're talking about the mind is simply thinking, but the mind is also feeling and willing. Anything else? Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.